So jumping into Alabama versus Florida State, probably the biggest surprise of the weekend. Early morning game. Thomas Castellanos, I mean, he did it all. He only threw 14 passes, but his impact on the game was major. It kind of reminded me of when Johnny Manziel came into Alabama and kind of just like took over, and the whole game was just controlled by whatever he decided to do. And then Castellanos, who is one of the more slippery guys, comes in from Boston College and is an immediate impact player from a team who won 2 games last year. Can you give me your thoughts on just kind of how he looked, and then we'll get into how Bama's defense looked after that?
Yeah, Tommy is a tough player. So, for going back to Boston College, the record probably isn't indicative of how good he was. Their head coach, you remember, left for the NFL like 3 weeks or 4 weeks before the season started. So they were without their head coach at Boston College. Kind of a weird situation. So he balls out kind of in his own way. He actually beat Florida State, if you remember that, which was really cool. So to be able to transfer there and kind
Yeah.
of pick that, which is awesome. Bama, going back to the Nick Saban era, a mobile quarterback has always been their downfall. Cam
Right.
Newton, Johnny Manziel, you mentioned him. Any guy that can run around, I mean, even Jalen Milroe, like has
Right.
their number. Well, Jalen, not Jalen Miller, but Jaden Daniels. All those guys have their number, and so it's really tough for them to. It's hard for anybody to really stop a running quarterback who's effective and can throw the ball. The thing about the 14 passes with him is it was raining. The like first quarter to like third quarter, it was kind of raining. And so that makes it,
Yeah.
they wouldn't throw that many passes. But a guy like him, they dialed up probably 25 pass plays and he just took off because
Yeah.
even though they had a spy, they only rushed three. And so if guys are
16
way
carries.
downfield,
Yeah,
yeah.
16 carries for 78 yards and a touchdown. Like I said, he's just a slippery guy, and with experience, you're that always is out gonna outweigh anything else. And we talk about the Bama defense, it kind of starts with the effort, and you see a lot on social media of clips of guys who are giving half-ass effort, not sprinting to the ball, just stuff that wouldn't fly on a Nick Saban defense. And if Nick Saban, this is kind of my thing that I've always been saying, if Nick Saban is as good as we all say he is, this is what is to be expected of a team when you leave. And the hardest coaching position is to follow a legend like this. And you kind of want to be the guy that is going to follow Kalen Deboer. If, this regime doesn't go the way it goes, the next guy after Deboer is probably in the best spot. Whereas following Nick Saban, it's just not the position that you really want to be in.
Nick Saban lost 3 games his last year. I think we start to really like, he's an all-time great. He's the greatest college head coach of all time. There's no disputing that.
I agree that
But
he was losing his grip a little bit.
in
Yeah.
the NIL transfer portal, you don't get the chance. Like there are so many guys in the NFL right now who were second string and third string. They're sophomore going into their junior season before they really got a shot. Some guys would play their senior year and then be first round draft picks, and that
Right.
was all. That's all it took. And so you had two deep, three deep who were 4 and 5 stars out of high school. Like when I get my 1 year to play, I'm going to the league. That's just how it is. And so that's no longer how it is at all now. Everybody's paying these players. You get 3 stars, you play a little bit. Look at John Mateer at Washington State. Like you get a guy like that, balls out a little bit, he's gone. And so with I get the Saban comparison because he is the most recent, but all none of these coaches, I would expect in the SEC 3 losses to be pretty standard. 3 losses, whether that's 2 losses in conference play, one out of conference, or it's 3 losses in conference. And so them losing to what probably is a really good Florida State team, to
Right.
me, isn't as big of a deal as they're making out to be. However, Kalen Deboer has dropped games to really like piss poor teams. They lost to Oklahoma last year, like unexpectedly. They lost to Vanderbilt. It's like, what are we
Right.
doing? So
Right.
I do get the criticism. However, at the same time, it wasn't like Nick Saban was running off 11-1, 11-1, and retired with a team that could have won a national championship. What he left was not that standard. That's for
Right.
sure.
I can agree with that. And just kind of looking at the play on the field, I go back to the effort, and I go back to defensive schemes, and maybe Bama doesn't have the generational defensive tackles that they used to get all the time, or the linebackers who from day one, that they're going to be a starting signal caller in the NFL on defense, or the shutdown corners. And we forget Nick Saban is a corners coach at heart, and he coached those corners up. And you can look at the lineage of corners that he has put in the NFL, and a lot of those guys start usually from day one. And when you get all of that out of Alabama, and then you see reports of Alabama's, asking for donor money. Alabama is, looking to cut funds elsewhere and add it to the football program. And it's like, it doesn't seem as if everybody is as dialed in as they once were. And so we go into the field and you get unrecognizable names at quarterback like a Ty Simpson, who for what his standard would be a good game. I mean, he went 23 for 43, had 254 yards and two touchdowns. He kind of did his part, I would say. And then you had guys like Ryan Williams who come into the season as people would say the second best receiver in the country. And it didn't really look like that. Number five, Jeremy Bernard looked like their best player on offense in week one, bar none. He had 8 catches for 146 yards.
There's a lot to unpack there because going back to Saban, and we'll touch on kind of the Ryan Grubb era of offensive coordinator at Alabama. When you think about building toughness on a team, you know this, you played in college, I played in college. Toughness starts on defense. Like it's very hard for a high powered, potent offense to be like the tough guys. So it's finesse,
Right.
it's scheme, it is timing, it's rhythm. None of that is rigid, hard, tough. And so you look at Saban being a defensive coach, you look at Kirby Smart being a defensive coach. Those teams are tough. The offense just kind of gets the job done, but the defense, nobody's getting behind. Everything's in
Right.
front, everything is sound, and there's a ton of effort. So
Yeah.
Saban, Alabama going from a defensive like focused team to an offensive focused team, yeah, there's going to be a little bit of washing out on the toughness side of it and the effort side of it because those guys aren't that program. We're not used to seeing that program not give 110%. But if we go to the Pac-12, the tape kind of looks like what Deboer is showing right now, and that's not good enough for the
True.
SEC. But that's the way it looked before.
Yeah.
And then what was your second point that you mentioned? Ty Simpson and Ryan Williams.
Ryan Williams. Yeah.
Getting to so just like Jeremiah Smith, if we listen, we'll talk about Ohio State and Texas in a little bit. But
Yeah.
within the first two drives, even the commentators were like, Jeremiah Smith needs to touch the football consistently.
Right.
He needs a touch here at every drive. He needs to touch the football. You look at a guy like Ryan Williams not getting those touches, and you have to wonder for him, is he committed off the field to different things? Is he not locked in? I don't choose to believe that, but like that is something you have to ask in the NIL era.
Yeah.
I don't know if Ryan Grubb, being the new offensive coordinator, if he focused on getting his best player on probably the football team, the rock as many times as he could have. I think if that was the case, then you probably have a different outcome in the game. Tommy Castellanos for Florida State, he's their best player, touch the ball every single play. Ryan Williams doesn't get the rock as much as he
Right.
should have, and it kind of shows in the result.
Well, a lot of what you saw on Saturday was Ryan Williams lining up in the slot. And for his stature and for his build, I mean, you look at him, he definitely put on some weight in the offseason, which he needed to, but that's not his game. And that's not where he went over 1,000 yards. He's an outside receiver. I know he's smaller, but when you start moving guys around all around the field, I know you want to get different matchups and the guys getting double teamed. You want him to get on the linebacker mainly, but you got to play to his strengths as well. And I think we don't give Jalen Milroe enough credit for, the his ability to take off with the ball and how much of a threat that was last year. That helped Ryan Williams. That helps open up the offense. I mean, Jalen Milroe literally was being scouted to be an NFL running back who just had a really good arm. And so all things included, and then a inexperienced quarterback who comes in, and then there's only a freshman, true freshman behind him. There's not really much other help that Alabama can get besides on their run game and on defense. And if they're not going to step up on defense, then this is going to be a long, long season.
I agree with that. I think if you going back to Ryan Williams lining up in the slot, one thing you do get with a high powered guy like that lining up in the slot is you get a two-way go. Being an outside player, you can go vertical, you can go comeback, but you mostly go post slant dig. You have a lot of in breaking stuff, and I know what you're going
Yeah.
to run on the outside: a stop route, a comeback, or a go, or a skinny post. So him getting into the slot does give him. He probably has a corner on top of him, but safety over the top. But he can go corner, he can go post, he can go dig, he can go out, he can go rub routes. So you do have a lot more flexibility with a guy like. I would personally love to see more NFL guys line up in the slot because, like you see, they just eat yards up and they're always open in the
Yeah.
middle. So I actually don't mind him being in the slot. I think that him being in the slot could make motion a lot easier, which get him the ball as a jet sweep, get him the ball on just like a quick receiver tunnel route, like a screen. So like those kinds of things that we didn't see too much that I would like to see, but him lining up in the slot's fine. G- Jalen Milroe being a running threat was probably one of those things that was like an Achilles heel for the team because he at times relied on his reels too often and didn't really read the field, looked at one guy in a progression, then decided to take off. And so it was hard for the offensive line to block for him, hard for receivers to really get open in time because he's going one read and then he's dipping out. And then
Yeah.
his inconsistency, throwing a bunch of interceptions or fumbling the ball, it's just hard to really be a great team when your quarterback is up and down like that. Weeks he'd be great, weeks he'd be horrible. And it's honestly, to Kalen Deboer's credit, it's honestly impressive. He's still on an NFL roster as a quarterback. Like that is an achievement, similar to Josh Heupel with um, Joe Milton. He's with the Cowboys now, was with the Patriots.
Right.
Huge credit to those guys for developing those quarterbacks that far because they aren't very good on the field when they're in college.
What is your panic meter going forward, 1 through 10?
So let me say this: they are undefeated in SEC play right now. And if you take that lens, then you say, okay, well, they could still technically win their conference and go to the playoff and make a huge run. I look at this loss probably similar to Ohio State losing to Michigan last year, like that kind of loss where it's like, that's a freaking head scratcher. Now, I think Florida State is a much better team than Michigan was.
Yeah.
I think Alabama's probably a lesser team than Ohio State was, so there's probably some middle there. My panic meter isn't ultra high with them. I know a lot of people, it's going to be a hot take, I guess, but I like Kalen
For
DeBoer. I think he's a really
sure.
good coach.
Yeah.
But I do think that when you look at SEC play and what he's done, he's beaten LSU, he's beaten Georgia, he's beaten Texas. So the toughest teams and the best coaching staffs in the conference, he's whooped on multiple times. And so I don't know that I'm too concerned about Alabama's future, but I do think when you start getting into the ticky-tack stuff of effort and how guys are behaving off the field, there is a huge spotlight on him. But again, I think if you beat Auburn, you beat Georgia, you beat Texas, you're going to have a job at Alabama. It's just the way it is.
I and I would agree with the sentiment of if he can beat those teams, then he has a job. Whereas, like, we look at Ryan Day, he wins a national championship, and people are like, well, if he can't beat Michigan, then, I don't think it's that. But I don't think this Alabama team, you can see that they're just not passing the eye test, not only for the standard of Alabama, but for what it takes that's going to beat Texas and Georgia and these other Big Ten teams. Because I just don't see it. Like, we really haven't seen Oregon and what they look like. We haven't seen Penn State. There's a lot. I mean, Ohio State looks like a more athletic version of they look like what Alabama used to with Caleb
Yeah,
Downs
yeah.
back there, and they have the beefy D line and linebackers you can run side to side. A lot of that, I'm not saying a lot of that talent has escaped Alabama, but it looks like these other teams are what Bama used to look like versus the other teams in the mid 2000s, pretty much.
I can agree with that. And I can also say human error, human instinct is this is a 2-10 football team FSU was last year.
Right.
Two wins. And so like just with the mentality of these boys are probably trash, we're gonna stomp them and we'll focus on our schedule coming up. Some of that might have played into it. You didn't expect a dogfight from Florida State. You didn't expect the quarterback from Boston College to be as good as he was. He's a great athlete, but nobody saw that coming. And so like I would say if you're Alabama and you're an Alabama fan, it's let's not overreact. Looking at their schedule, Louisiana Monroe, play Wisconsin, and then 3 games from now, it's they play Georgia at Georgia. So that'll
Right.
be like the next test that they really get. Then they go Vanderbilt, which should be a payback game. Play Mizzou, that should be a win. Play Tennessee, that should be a win. South Carolina. So I see 2 games that would be tough. They go
I
have
mean, with
LSU at home.
what we're talking about, South Carolina might be the scariest opponent on their schedule because I think Lenore Sellers is going to be prepared to run all over that defense.
Possibly. He's not as he is. Tommy Castellanos is quicker than he is fast. Lenora Sellers is faster than he is quick. So I do think a spy on a guy like that will be okay. I think you put a linebacker with a little bit of speed on top of a guy like that, when you rush three, maybe even rush forward and sacrifice one. Lenora Sellers only throws the ball like 16 times a game. They don't launch it. He doesn't launch it on the field a whole lot. So I think that there's an opportunity for them to shut him down. I
Well,
see
yeah.
3 tough games on this schedule, which does put Bama at a 4 loss if he loses all 3 of those. But he's beaten Georgia, he's beaten LSU, and he already beat South Carolina. So to me, I don't know. I don't see that they're in all that much
I
trouble.
think
They
that
probably
all
are a
these
three-loss team.
teams, though, I think every team that you've named has gotten better this year. Georgia,
Sure.
it's a question. We'll see because they played Marshall. But
Right.
I think all of those teams have gotten better this year, while Alabama clearly hasn't. I mean, if we want to take week 1 for what it is, they just haven't gotten better. and it doesn't look like a playoff team to me, especially with their passing game and their running game just not really being where it should be.
We are 1 week in. They played through the weather, and this is a team that
But
went
they
into the
got
game.
blown out like 31-17.
It was,
That was
but at
way
one
worse
point,
than
but
what
at
it
one point,
go.
no, but at one point it was 24-10, and they scored a touchdown right after, so made it 24-17, and then FSU scored again. So like, this was a one score game. It was a two to one score game like the entire time, and then FSU got a two-score lead and held it at the very end. There was a time, it was like 7 minutes left, they scored. That was an opportunity where if Bama gets a stop, which they typically do, which is kind of to your point, then it becomes like we almost won that game. So for all the issues and mistakes and the effort plays that they didn't have supposedly, this was much a closer game than people expect. Put it on a neutral field with no weather environment or no weather in the mix, maybe it's different.
Maybe so.